Welcome to the Explainer. Today, we're going to break down a really powerful 5-stage workflow for using AI to turn those raw, messy QA test logs into game-changing insights that can totally level up your entire team. Okay, let's just dive right into this because if you're in QA, you know this feeling. You have absolute mountains of data from every regression run. Durations, environments, browsers, pass/fail statuses. It piles up so fast, it's just overwhelming. But the real gold is buried in there, and today we're going to learn exactly how to find it. And this is the really crucial point. We're not just lobbing random questions at an AI and, hoping for the best. This system actually gives the AI a professional role to play. We're telling it, hey, you are now a data analyst. You are an investigator. And that simple shift transforms it from just a fancy calculator into a real strategic partner. All right, so here's our game plan for this explainer. We're going to walk through each of these 5 stages, step by step, and I'll show you exactly how to go from that feeling of data chaos to total clarity and, most importantly, to action. This right here is the core of the entire system. Think of it like a journey, okay? We start with a data audit, getting our house in order. Then we move to asking the right questions, building a blueprint for our analysis, getting the actual insights, and finally, presenting them in a slick, executive-ready dashboard. Let's jump into our first, and I would argue most critical stage, making sure our data is actually usable and solid to begin with. This is the unbreakable mantra for stage 1. It is so simple, but so profound. Any analysis, I don't care how sophisticated it is completely doomed if your source data is a mess. So, first things first, we clean. So in this stage, we prompt the AI to basically put on its data auditor hat. First, it'll give you a little preview, maybe even create a data dictionary so everyone's on the same page about what duration_ms actually means. Then it really gets to work, helping you find missing values, spot weird outliers that could totally skew your results, and clean up all those annoying inconsistencies. Like when one column has dev, and dev all mixed together. It spots all that stuff and then suggests the fixes, which is a huge time saver. And if you're wondering why this first step is so important, well, check this out. Just taking the time to properly clean and audit your data upfront can boost the accuracy of your final insights by a massive 60%. It is an absolutely non-negotiable step if you want reliable results. All right, so our data is squeaky clean and standardized. Now we can move on to the really fun part, asking the right questions and planning our attack. You see, stage 2 is where we force the AI to think like an experienced test lead, not just some data processor. We ask it to generate the most impactful, most strategic questions we could be asking of our data. This turns all that noise into a clear path toward real knowledge. For instance, instead of just asking for a list of tests that failed, we can pose a much more strategic question, like this one. Now, flakiness, for anyone who isn't deep in the QA weeds, that just refers to those tests that sometimes pass and sometimes fail without any code changes. They're super unreliable. This question doesn't just ask what failed, it starts to ask why, and that's where the real value is. Then, in stage 3, we get the AI to create a step-by-step plan, a literal blueprint to answer that specific question. It tells us exactly what to do, how to group the data, which metrics to calculate, and even how to visualize the results to get the clearest possible answer. Think of it like this. You would never just start writing a complex automation script without a clear locator strategy, right? A plan for how you're going to find and interact with things on the page. That would be total chaos. Well, the exact same logic applies here. You shouldn't dive into data analysis without a plan. And this stage gives you exactly that. So we have a clean data set and a rock-solid plan. It's finally time for execution. Let's see what the data actually has to tell us. And this is where the magic happens. The AI runs the analysis following our blueprint, and then it does something absolutely crucial. It gives you a simple, clear, human-readable interpretation of the results. This step is the bridge between complex data and actual business value. Instead of handing your manager a spreadsheet and saying, "Here, you figure it out," you can give them one powerful sentence that tells them exactly what they need to know. Now, what's really amazing about this is how a simple visual makes that takeaway instantly obvious and super impactful. You can see in a split second that mobile test flakiness is a way bigger problem than desktop. The data is no longer hidden in a spreadsheet, it's practically shouting at you. And honestly, that's no surprise. Research consistently shows that using visuals like charts and graphs can improve our understanding and retention of data by up to 5 times compared to just reading raw numbers or text. It just works. But here's the thing. An amazing insight is completely useless if it isn't communicated effectively to the people who can actually do something about it. And that brings us to our final critical stage. Here, we have the AI pull everything together into a single cohesive dashboard. So let's break this down. That mobile flakiness visual immediately draws your eye to the biggest problem. The chart of peak durations helps you spot performance bottlenecks. The list of failing modules tells developers exactly where to focus their debugging time. And crucially, it all culminates in a clear action item: optimize the slow tests. See? It's not just data anymore. It's a direct path to improvement. And this is the ultimate goal, right here: to distill all of that complex analysis into a one-slide summary that lets leadership grasp the situation quickly and make faster, smarter, data-driven decisions. You're not just presenting data, you're enabling speed. So let's pull all of this together. Let's recap the entire workflow and see what this new capability really means for the role of QA in any organization. And here it is, the whole process in 5 core steps. You audit your logs to make sure they're clean. You ask smart, strategic questions. You design a blueprint for the analysis. You run it and visualize the results. And finally, you present those insights in a clear, actionable way. This is the path from being buried in data to being celebrated for your insights. And this is really the final thought I want to leave you with. This whole workflow is about so much more than just analyzing logs. It's about elevating the entire function of QA from simple test execution to a strategic force that drives business value through data, through insight, and through risk mitigation. It's about becoming the smartest department in the room.